Jordan, how well did you get to know your granddad?
I was so I'm gonna put it to you this way: not as much as I would desire,
Mhm.
um, and not because of his fault. As my dad mentioned, he transitioned, and it was at a young age, so I have memories.
Mhm.
But as far as vivid experiences, that's one thing that still to this day as a father myself, um, I pray about, I think about, and I honestly ask the Lord for my son that he not just extends my father's life just for my sake, because I
Yeah.
would love to have him forever. My grandfather's no longer in the picture. My son's 2.5 years old.
Mhm.
So many times when I see him and my father interact,
Mhm.
it's a joy for me. And then sometimes I think the challenge with life and struggle is that the enemy tries to creep into those situations, right?
Mhm. Mhm.
And to try to convince you that God's plan for your family, for your
Mhm.
generations, for
Right.
this heritage
Right.
is not good. And so that's one of the ways that I battle with, even
Right.
as a young man. But what I see in the culture is there's a grind set, and I call it a grind set, like a mindset centered on grind, a grind set where people are saying, hey, you got to go out of the home and do more and provide more and make more money. And a lot of that is honestly coming at the expense of our children.
Mhm.
And so I didn't experience that from my father, and I saw the benefit. So for me, I just wanted to be able to impart that same love and dedication to my son.
Sure. That's what I call intentionality and
Yeah.
what have you. And you planted that seed well, George. Is there anything in particular that you came to a wake up call to say that you needed to prioritize the right stuff?
Yes, I would say I got a wake up call as well because, like, when I see Jordan, my oldest son, I see a lot of me in him. He's working the long hours. He's trying to make things work for his family. He's providing for his family. So I seen the structure that I put out there. He mimicked that's off of that. But I also see where it took time for me to stop and slow down and to give more to them when they was little ones to be able to support them as well.
I always say,
Yeah.
if the Lord thought it important enough to send His Son to be physically with us for a window of time on this earth, then dads ought to prioritize their physical
True.
presence,
So
right?
true, Rick.
The devil tries
That's
to tell
good.
us to balance
There
everything,
you go.
and
Right.
and that He is not an equal to
Right.
Jesus the Christ.
At all.
Amen.
So we prioritize
There
our
you go.
relationship with Christ, learn to live that relationship in marriage, and we're in a lot better shape, right?
Yeah.
So
So true, Rick.
that's
Absolutely.
awesome.
I have seen, and I only use my father as a lens to reflect this message. I've seen him grow so much emotionally.
Mm.
Growing up, I'd never seen him cry. I'm just being honest with you. My dad did not cry. In our later years, I've seen him cry more times than I can count. And he doesn't realize how impactful that was for me. You talk about emotional availability. And it's not that the waterworks have to prove it or validate, the sincerity of a conversation or two. But what it is it's a constant reminder to make myself emotionally available.
Now, how did you set that standard to set that example there?
Well, I tried my best. If I go back to my father, he taught us that it was okay for men to cry
Mm-hmm.
and to be emotional. He showed us that God is first in everything that we do, and that you need to always remember that and stand on that. And to the emotional part of it, when I walked into Jordan home one day to visit him and his son, it just took me away because of he said, Papa's here, but Papa's not here to play. So I only had a short time because Jordan was on a time schedule with his kid. He needed to be in the bed at a certain time, which I love the way they have the structure in the home.
We try our best.
So I did my best to get off a 12-hour shift to get there because I'm looking at the clock. I got to get there because I want to see my grandson.
Sure.
So Jordan said, I'm going to pray, Papa going to pray, and you going to pray, which is my grandson, Jordan Jr., J2, we call him. And Daddy prayed, Papa prayed, and then when he prayed, it's like I say, wow. I say the structure in the home is coming back full circle. And not only he prayed for everyone, immediate family. It was so touching. So that was something I would have wished the bottle up.
Sure.
That was so emotional, so touching.
Absolutely. What a glimpse. I call those glimpses of God's glory. And it's absolutely breaks you down, doesn't it? People will ask me why I break down sometimes. I say, well, that's just because the Holy Spirit showed up big time
Yes.
in that situation. And that's wonderful emotional engagement all the way around.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I'm going to put it to you this way. The best way I lead my son by example is by loving his mother, my wife. I think that that's the root of it. And I put it in those terms because a young man that sees a man love a woman purely, one woman at that, right? So this is talking about the fidelity of a marriage being intact. That creates such a good example of a culture that God is pleased with.
Mm-hmm.
So he actually did the deep digging to figure out, hey, if you're having a hard time with your anger here, what's got you so angry, man? Let's talk about it. Man, I don't know if you remember this. We used to go to the mall. Remember that?
Mm-hmm.
We used to have a men's night out.
Yeah.
Man, listen,
That
he
was
used
great.
to take me and my brother, and we used to go for ice cream some days it was the mall, and we didn't even go to spend no money, man. We was window shopping.
Yeah.
But, it was really about just the ambiance and just the opportunity to connect with one another. So those created those spaces for him to actually give the correction, because it didn't always come with a spanking. It didn't always come with a stern talking to. Sometimes it came just with a conversation and saying, listen, okay, this is the way it has to go. Okay. So what do we have to do to get it back on the track? And sometimes that's all we really needed. We've been married coming up in June, it'll make 4 years. So I'm still very young in my marriage in the context of life. But we have so much experience that has been poured into us, not just through my father and of course my mother, but she also has 2 wonderful parents. Her parents have been married for over 30 years. They have a wonderful setup as well. And so I get the chance to get the benefit of faithful fathering, not just in my experience, but also through my wife's. We have 2 lovely, adorable, awesome kids. My son, Jordan, we call him J2. He's my junior. So he's about 2.5 years old. He'll make 3 coming up soon in August. But then I have my beautiful baby girl, Naomi. She's like my princess, man. I love her that she's 4 months.
Ruh-roh.
Yeah, she has my heart, man, already. But I get the chance to parent them in a godly way, and so my prayer every night when I pray with my son, and even just when I have talks with the Lord myself, is, Lord, help me be the man that you've called me to be, and they need me to be. And so I try to walk in that every day with a good example from my own father and try my best at it.
Sure. Now, growing up, Jordan, what were your interests? When did you realize that you're led down this road of in ministry?
My father spent a tremendous amount of time around my brother and I, really our whole family, and a part of that incorporated the Lord, right? Because he's leading us in the Word, he's spending time with us, we're having thought-provoking, godly conversations. So throughout elementary and middle school, I always had a love for sports. I had a heart murmur as a kid. And so that is really the reason why I faded away from football. I got off baseball, which is I know my dad's love before then. So I kind of broke his heart there, even though I probably was the best at baseball compared to the other sports that I played. But I just, how you might be talented at something, but just don't have a love for it. So it just fades out. And so around high school, I began to pick up basketball, and I did it casually. I mean, I played on the team, but I didn't have a high school career that any record book would hold, to be honest with you. So it's more so a memory in my mind. But a guy named Dr. Pierre Cannings. And so him and I had a wonderful relationship, still do to this day. And so he was encouraging me to consider ministry. And so he said, hey, there's an opportunity here at the church. Once again, the church I grew up with since I was in the 7th grade. So I was like, okay, cool, let's do it. And I was also encouraged not only by him, but also by his father, Dr. Paul Cannings, to pursue an education. Of course, this meant for me to go into seminary. And they pretty much told me, listen, it's going to be Dallas Seminary, okay? And so I enrolled in Dallas Seminary and got a master of theology, which is we call it the crazy degree because you're learning all the Greek and all the Hebrew, and it can be a lot. But through those seasons, God really confirmed the calling. I got the opportunity to do something I was always doing. I was always around sports because of my father. I would read instead of the back of the sports, trading cards. They don't really do that anymore now, right? Because everything's so digital. But I got a passion for that. College was an avenue for me to pursue that at a greater level. And so by God's grace, there was a partnership that ESPN had with the Southland Conference, which is the conference that Lamar University was in. So I got a chance to actually do some ESPN broadcasts while in undergrad, right? So this is documented. You can look it up, right?
Fantastic.
Like this is legit. And so that was a world, man, that experience, that was a whole new world. It was a beautiful experience. And so that was my passion. I even graduated in communications intending to do that. But as we know, God jumped in the middle of that and said, hey, I'm going to still take that speaking ability, that giftedness that I've given you, but instead of doing it behind a camera, right, at a desk, you're going to do it in the pulpit.
We would go to all the games, the away games, out of town games. So we always supported our kids wherever they was at. And he was good at it. He had a passion for it. I knew that at a young age because he would always, like he said, read the back of the cards. And then we would draw up the X's and O's. And we would actually run out to play because I was the coach at a young age with him. And so he was just so gifted in that area, I thought. I said, wow, it's a passion for that. So when he came up to me one day, he said, Dad, as well as my wife was in the room with me, she said, I think God has called me to preach. And when he told me that, I was really shocked because I say, wow. I didn't see that coming directly, but indirectly I did because we was always involved in church. You know, the family was always in church. You know, we prayed together, like he was saying, we always was in church. So church was always in them and still in them. So when he told me that, I told my wife, I said, well, we're not going to get between God. And him. We're not doing
That's
that.
a bad place to be.
Right. We're not doing that. I said, so what we're going to do, we're going to take him to our pastor. We set aside and went to the pastor, went to in his conference room. And he just, you know, asked him a few questions and talked to him. And when the pastor came out, he told me, he said, yes, God has called him to preach.
Because there's so much talk, Rick, about, you know, God doesn't equip the called, he calls the well, I said that backwards. Let me slow down for a second. He doesn't call the equipped, he equips the called.
Sure.
Yet we don't talk about how you get equipped, right? And so Bible college actually is a solution to that issue. And so God has had me, you know, placed there for, I think, a particular reason. So I'm grateful. But take time to show love and to create that example. And then for the young fathers who might not have had a man, a father figure, anyone in their life, be that example. You can be the change. It takes one decision to set a family for the future. Whether that's being more diligent in your financial planning, whether it's taking your fitness more seriously and working out so that you can make sure that you're going to be here for your family, whether that's taking the time to read your word, getting the Bible, getting the scriptures, pray more. Do what it takes because at the end of the day, God puts the burden of a family on the shoulders of a dad, of a father, of a husband.